Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Chrissy. So today I'm doing a wrap-up of the books I read in November. I read a total of 6. The first book is an indie book. It is called The Prisoner by Sarah Allen. It's about a girl named Maria who gets transported to this alien world where they kind of just kidnap humans. They kidnap a few men, but mainly women, to be companions to the males on their planet. And it kind of goes along in those lines, though it's a very sociological sci-fi. So the alien race, the Pegasians, they have really strict kind of rules of etiquette and how you should act with people. Not only their own, but also with the humans that are there. And primarily the women are treated fairly well-ish for, I guess, being kidnapped. You know. But it's a really interesting read. It delves into why social norms are there and why rules of etiquette are there, and it really puts those into question of why do we have them, why can't they be changed more easily. So it runs along those lines of thought process. There are a few things that I felt were either rushed or didn't lend itself to description, so there's quite a bit of telling instead of showing in order to move the plot along. So be aware of that when reading this. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I did find it very intriguing as we went through, and I was interested throughout the whole novel. It's just that there was kind of those bits and pieces where it seemed like it was being rushed. So a lot of info, a lot of story condensed into one book. It probably could have expounded onto 2 books and been completely fine and still interesting. Second book I read this month is Corrigan by Rebecca F. Kenny. This is a really short read. It's kind of like more of a novella style. It follows a gal named Aslan? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but I'll spell it for you right here. She is a Corrigan, and a Corrigan is a person that turns into a creature during the daytime, and they turn back into human in the nighttime, unless they steal life force from other people. So they can steal like a day, a month, a week. I should say a day, a week, a month, a year, however much they need. But it's a pretty tedious process, it looks like, so it lends itself to its own danger, especially when they're trying to keep under the radar. So it does follow this gal who is that creature and kind of her story and how she just wants to be, normal. There is a bit of a love story in this. A second character is named Zane. He's a regular guy who happens to get into a relationship with the main character. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I did find I loved the world of the Corrigan and the legends that are around it. Also, the leprechauns that came in later, and I'll see if I can pronounce this correctly. The Farderig. He's kind of this shaman, wizard thing. He's a magical being who's been around for many, many years, and he comes into the picture and kind of gives hell, breaks hearts, as it were. I did find Zane to kind of be, I don't want to say unnecessary, but as a main character, he just seemed like a plot device to kind of just chug things along. It didn't feel like he was essential to the storyline. The third book I read was Infomocracy by Malka Older, and this follows into 3 different perspectives: Ken, Mishima, and Domain, I think his name is? Domain? It's all about the election process that goes in. So a government per 100,000 people is in this world. So for example, in my city, there's about 500,000 people, so that would be 5 different governments to control different sectors of the city. And there's a big election that comes along, and everyone votes for what government they want per their 100,000. So if someone gets the super majority, then they have a lot more power than those who just control like 1 or 2 like pieces of land in any country. Certain countries decide not to participate in this, and they have their own kind of laws and figure out how they're going to govern themselves. So it follows those three perspectives while the election process is going on. There's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of trying to undermine things. There is a little bit of romance between Ken and Mishima, and it's the kind that I really enjoy because Mishima is constantly suspicious of Ken throughout the novel. But it's a very interesting read. I liked it a lot. I will be reading what's next in the series. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I did feel like some of the world building itself was a little bit confusing at first. It took a while for it to kind of click into my head what was going on as far as how governments were running their sectors. So the next book I read is Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan and McGuire, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars because it is just fantastic. It takes place in the moors with Jack and Jill. It tells their story, how they go through their door and what they go through, how exactly it is that Jill came to be the adoptive daughter of pretty much Dracula, though he's not called Dracula in there, and then how Jack becomes the apprentice of the doctor that's there. So it follows them and their journey. It's really heartbreaking. It's a short novella as well. It's, I believe, less than 200 pages. But it's 200 pages that ripped my heart out and kind of stomped on it, so, as it were. The next book that I read is Island in the Sea of Time by S.M. Stirling. It's the very first novel in the Change series that he's done. That's a very big series. And I think these books kind of are like the prequel to the Change, the actual series in and of itself. And it follows the island of Nantucket. Why Nantucket, I don't know, but it follows the island of Nantucket as they're transported back into the Bronze Age. Now, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, mainly because there's a lot of things in it that are kind of just messed up and didn't quite age as well as I think the author was a little bit hoping. I did like the novel a lot. It goes into a very scientific look at how things would be done, and when I say scientific, I mean the main characters that make it work do so based on a lot of knowledge that they have. So people who have an interest in astronomy and looking up into the stars for constellations and all that kind of stuff manage to figure out ways for like directions and all those kind of good things. Ship captains help out a lot, and there is a lot of diversity in this book, and I was rather surprised because this was published in the late 90s, and if you read a lot of fantasy from that time period, the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of it's not very, very diverse. You don't have a lot of varying types of characters with different backgrounds, but in Island in the Sea of Time, I got that title right. In this novel, there's a black woman who is a ship captain, and she was part of the Coast Guard, and she becomes she has a very big role throughout the novel. There's an Asian doctor who is female as well, who is a very interesting character, but there is a lot more than just white characters and white heterosexual characters throughout this novel. So that was really nice to see in a book that's been that is about 20 years old. So kudos to S.M. Stirling. And the last book that I read for November is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This book was a really cute book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a really quick, nice read. Very cute in that you have a high school romance. It felt really odd though because I am much older than a high schooler now. Because I'm in my 30s and reading this kind of, it was like, you know, kids, don't do that. Don't be like that. But it kind of satisfied my need to see something that was adorable and relatable for when I was in high school. The main character, Laura Jean, does remind me of kind of how the feelings that I had when I was in high school, where I'd have these like really intense crushes, and the only way to get them out was either to write it down or to find some way to express that, and then all of a sudden it was kind of like done. No, I'm glad none of that ever made it out into the world like it did with Laura Jean. But it was very cute and fun to read. I also watched the movie, and I thought that was fun as well. The biggest issue I had with To All the Boys I've Loved Before is that we have this character of Genevieve, and she's known to be scary with Laura Jean, and we're given a little bit of explanation, but we're not really shown it. So we're told it, but we're not really shown what's really going on. I actually think they did a better job of showing it in the movie rather than in the book. I think the main issue that Laura Jean has with her is just that she, dated the Peter, and they still have feelings for one another. So that is apparent in the book, but her being this mean, kind of hateful person isn't as much. Like, she does crappy things, but is it really that crappy to where you're afraid of her? And I do realize I say that as an adult looking back on my own experience and saying, I could have taken her out. By the way, if anyone out there has some recommendations for some sweet romances, romance books, like where it's not just about, bang bang into the room, by all means leave them down in the comments below, and especially if they have characters that are adults instead of teenagers or young adults, mainly because I just don't see enough of them around. Or I don't hear about them as much. Usually I hear about romances if they are young adult or really early 20s kind of deal. So if anyone has any recommendations, then please put them in the comments below. And that's the wrap up that I have. I can't wait for this background to change. I've been working on one of the rooms in my house to try and change it more into a room for filming, so hopefully that will happen very soon. I'm almost done with it, and hopefully within like a couple of months into the new year, when I get like either tax return or one of my extra paychecks in the early months, I'll be able to spend it a little bit on bookshelves that are taller, because I have some teeny tiny bookshelves that don't really lend itself to being in the videos. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you like to see this face of beauty, then you can hit the subscribe button, and may you get lost in a book.